What's going on, my Kaza pups and Cinesluts? Here we are, third review. Hopefully it seems like everyone's enjoying them, so I'm going to keep going with them at this point. I'm in a little different location. I'm the only one home right now, so I have to keep an eye on the dog, so any noises that you're hearing, like chewing, barking, fighting, that's from them. You might get a guest appearance from one or two of them. It's close to their dinner time, so they're probably a little annoyed with me that I'm not feeding them, but we're going to start this third review. This is the second time I'm doing it just because I was kind of rambling the first 5 minutes of me recording this, and it just didn't make any sense, so I'm going to try to reamp what I said and kind of make it a little better from what I was doing, just because my viewers deserve it. For Kristen, wearing a different animal shirt, 100% lion, not lion made, believe it's a polyester cotton blend. But anyway, so this third episode, I want you all to say it with me, is about that bitch Carole Baskin. Everyone's top hated character pretty much in this, it seems like, rightfully so. I didn't really like this episode. I understand why they did it, to kind of show you a backstory on Carole and where she's coming from, and kind of show why Joe is so fervent in getting against her, especially with her whole ex-husband. We'll kind of explain a little bit of that. I'll explain my ideas on the theories that he has, and if not she did it. So the episode kind of delves throughout her younger life, the household that she came from, which sounded pretty rough. And then she was also, the whole topic was that she said she had been raped as well when she was younger, so it explains kind of why she was on the run and kind of how she ended up with Don. She ended up with Don after she had been with believe she'd married a guy when she was 17, he was 19. He was very abusive. I think she had 2 kids, so again, another understanding why she left this situation that she was in. But it also leads to the very unusual meeting of the two, of Don Lewis and Carole Baskin. So he meets her alongside a road after, and you find out later that he'd left his wife and his 2 kids as well, so already starting off with an A+ with this dude. So he picks her up, and the whole thing of her holding a gun to him to hold him accountable is a little wild. But I mean, I guess if that's how they were going to develop this relationship, that's how they were going to do it. So again, he deserts his wife and kids. They start their own life. She finds out that he's a big cat advocate and collector, so she kind of starts getting drawn to that life. Which, I mean, who isn't at that point? A younger teenager, and you have an older man, woman, whatever it is, kind of bringing you into this life and showing you, wow, this is not a bad life to live. I get to play with all these big cats and everything like that. And at that point, I don't know how old she was or around what year it was, so I guess the laws and regulations, again, are very loose at that point, so they both were saying there was no issue with it. But the biggest thing that you get to see throughout this is Carole's big thing is she's supposed to be bringing in circus animals and roadside zoo attractions and animals that are kind of on the wayside. She's bringing in to protect them. You find out in this episode that she bought, sold, and bred some of these animals to start the sanctuary. So some of the animals she has in there, I don't know how many are still there, maybe from the time that her and Don started this, were from her own breeding efforts and her own handling efforts. She kind of tries to make it seem like that this was all Don's idea, this was all his idea to kind of make this all happen, but they both were opening this place. Granted, it was his money that was opening it, but she was backing him a lot, which again, I don't know how much she felt like she was trapped with all this, but she perpetuates this idea that breeding and cub petting is all a bad idea and keeping them as pets, but then she has footage of herself showing that she was doing the same exact thing years and years ago. Granted, hindsight's 20/20. She grew up, she realized maybe this isn't a smart idea to do, but she never really takes herself for accountable for doing any of this. Someone that's willing to open something up like that should be able to air their dirty laundry and take the criticism that you're going to have. I think it's ridiculous that she's trying to harp down on these people and say, oh, cub petting and owning them as pets are the worst thing in the world, and I don't understand who would do this. Bitch, you were one of them. You were one of them to be able to do that. You can't stand on this high steeple and say that, oh, all these people are terrible when you were one of them. granted, again, like I'm saying, people change, people get better, but she isn't willing to admit that she was one of those people. She makes it seem like this was all Don's idea. Why would I want to do this? Blah, blah, blah. She had outfits for all these animals. She dressed them up. She made them seem like they were perfect house cats and everything like that. Like, come on. Like, admit to yourself that you were one of these people and say, I've grown as a person. I saw the errors in my way, and I want to make the environment in this world a better place by taking in these animals and doing them. But you have some of these animals that you raised yourselves, that you bred yourselves, and granted, you probably gave away to other people that you aren't willing to admit to. Like, take responsibility for your actions. Yeah, you were a young kid and did all this, but now you're an older adult. Like, everyone has to take accountability for their actions. Like, it's just ridiculous that she's saying that it was all Don's idea, all Don's fault, trying to set it up to make her seem like the martyr of this situation. Now, again, I'm not. She had a lot of issues and a lot of problems in her past, so it's like kind of hard to fault her for some of the things because she was maybe not in the right mindset of everything to understand what she was doing. But now she does. Take responsibility for your actions. Don't be sitting there in your high tower saying that you're the greatest cat rescuer, the greatest. Look at me. Look at all these accomplishments that I've made. When you're trying to stand on the backs of the people. When you were one of those backs of the people that you made all these issues appear, and then you're trying to fix them, which is nice. You're trying to fix them, but you created some of the problems that you're trying to fix. That's Nike in the corner, right, Nike? You would never do that. Thank you. You would never do that. So I'm looking over at my phone because I have all my notes on my phone at this point. So Don ends up going missing, just out of the blue. He's gone, suspected dead at this point throughout the show. I didn't take too many notes on this just because this episode, like, again, it intrigued me, but like I knew she had possibly killed her husband, so that this episode wasn't as crazy to me as the rest of the episodes. So Dawn goes disappearing. She ends up running into her brother, who conveniently is, I believe, either the sheriff of the county or he's some kind of higher up in the police department. Just conveniently runs into him and conveniently mentions this, and he blows it off just because she says, oh, he just disappeared and he has all these ailments all of a sudden. She creates such a backstory as to why he would have disappeared, and granted, there are some investigations into him disappearing into Puerto Rico and everything, but everything comes to a grinding halt at some point. Like, the police just stop investigating pretty much. From what I recall, they didn't do any DNA swaps on the meat grinder. They didn't do any traces on his van besides showing that his mechanic had worked on it at some point, and they didn't sweep the property at all. Yes, you can get rid of a body, it seems like, very easily on something like that, but not within that 48 hours. It would have taken a while for those animals to most likely eat his body if they were going to do that. And two, there would have been some kind of trace around the property that his body was there, or, again, I don't know why. I'm going to assume, and this is probably going to trigger some people or make them angry, but, like, I'm assuming since her brother was so high up in the police committee and he didn't want any backlash on the rescue on himself, he kind of just brushed over the situation and made it push along as saying, oh, he had Alzheimer's, he had all this other stuff. If he had disappeared before and he had all these Alzheimer's problems, why didn't she report it? If you're that concerned about your husband and that concerned about his ideal, his mindset, and he had disappeared before, you didn't seem to be rushing anywhere to say that he disappeared all of a sudden. Granted, they had a fight earlier, I think, in that day, and he had said he was going to Puerto Rico and he was picking up all these cars, but all the people that she could have checked in with, I would realistically think that she had cared about her husband. And granted, I think she did touch on that he might have been, maybe not abusive, but even an emotionally abusive, so still abusive at that point, towards her at some point. But if they were still in contact and communication, you'd think she would have checked in with him, because as I recall, most of the money was in his name, so to run that organization, you would still need to be in contact with the person that has all the money there, which leads to my whole thing as most likely I'm not going to say much, she killed her husband. There's no other real way at this point that he would have just gone up and disappeared. He loved these animals, from what it seemed like, and he loved this. Again, I'm using love, but these people didn't really love their animals if they're using them for petting and all this other stuff. He would have wanted checked in on his rescue and make sure everything's running properly, especially if it seemed like, again, he didn't really, they both started to lose trust. It seemed like, again, all speculation, but it's all speculation about this at this point. But the whole idea that she was able to fabricate this story, and every time they interview her and every time you see them interviewing, she seems pretty calm and collected about everything, and she's not freaking out too much about the situation that he would have disappeared and that he's going to show back up or anything like that. It's just the police stop pretty much at that point investigating because she has this whole story, which I think is mind-boggling that they aren't willing to look into something like this, especially with a non-profit organization operating and all this money that's just up in the air right now. Sorry, I'm looking back at my phone for my notes. Joe also goes over he doesn't even think that maybe he was fed to the tigers, the whole septic tank idea, which I think is more realistic than her grinding up a human being. Granted, there are people out there that you wouldn't think, serial killers, that are willing to do all that, but I think more realistically, something had happened, maybe an argument between the two of them, and then something got out of hand and she ended up killing. Granted, did she mean to kill him? Maybe not, but I think she also had the biggest motive to do it. She has this rescue. She wants to get rid of the person that's kind of maybe holding her back or not wanting to do the same things that she wants to do, because again, she did mention that after a while she was like, okay, she tried to spay and neuter all the animals as fast as she could when Don would go off on these trips just so they couldn't breed anymore. Granted, she was leading herself down the right path, I think, of making sure these animals had the right life to lead at this point, but she wasn't doing it in the proper situation. I think she couldn't find any other way to kind of get the money from him, because if she divorced him, I'm assuming he had some kind of thing in line where she isn't going to get everything and he would have the rescue, because again, he's paying for everything. So two and two together, I think the investigation should have went on more to think the only person that's going to benefit from this is Carol, because she's going to have all this money to run the rescue. Why would someone kill this man out of the blue? Yes, people die randomly, they get shot, they disappear and everything, but again, everything else that they led to a dead end, but they didn't decide to come back to the one person who most times the people that end up getting murdered are by their spouses or their loved ones, which I think is like 101 for most investigations at this point to kind of do it. Again, I watch a lot of Forensic Files, so I'm kind of on par with my investigations. Let's see, and then just things that start tipping you off more and more. This woman Carol breaks into Don's office and steals the wills. What kind of sane human being and sane person at this point is going to go in and steal your supposed disappearing dead husband's wills to go in and change them? Why? What's the point of doing that? And the whole point, I mean, we all find out, is that she changes the will to put clauses in there if Don disappears. And even the investigators, no one should put into their disposed of husband's will that if they disappear, I get all this money all of a sudden. And she waited to file it a day after. You have to wait a certain period of time. They said 5 years to claim them dead before you can start pulling anything out of that will. You waited a day after. Like, if you're someone that's holding out hope, thinking that your husband just disappeared into Puerto Rico, you would hope that he would show back up and you'd put in all these efforts to kind of go out and find him. She did none of that, from what I can see. She just sat there at the rescue, continuing with life as normal, which, granted, maybe that was her coping mechanism, but come on. The police should have checked more into it. I don't know how much it takes to investigate different things or kind of get into it to do, but there are so many angles that they could have brought into this. And the fact that this woman was willing to go this far for these animals says something that she isn't in the right state of mind in any sense. And even if you don't believe that she killed her husband, do you really want to be involved with someone that possibly committed murder on that site and with these animals and everything? I don't think I would. Granted, I almost was one of them, but at the same time, like, why would you why would you want to be around someone that has all this publicity and everything like that because of possibly killing her husband, not for all the things that she's doing positively for these animals? It just shows, I think, also the point that she's in it for the money. Obviously, she's not in it for these animals. She could have tried other outlets to raise money for this, but her biggest thing was, I'm going to kill this man to keep all my money. Again, all speculation for all this, but it's the easiest way to collect that money. Which, again, I still don't understand why the police hadn't done any more background into what could have been on the property and what she was possibly capable of. And the whole time they're interviewing her, she's only trying to prove that she didn't do it. She's not trying to show any other... the only point she's trying to show is that he disappeared. She's not trying to show that she'd cared for this man or there'd been other reasons. But she should... Sorry, just again, rambling, because again, this episode was not up to what I wanted for the episode. She only cared about proving that it wasn't her, not about finding him. Which I think speaks volumes. Like, as someone personally, like, if I had someone disappear in my life that I was that much of a loved one, I think I'd be putting all my efforts into trying to find them. Ooh, voice crack. But she's only in it to be like, alright, well, I didn't do it, so that's it, so let's just stop talking about it. She tried to keep pushing it under and under the rug to kind of make it seem like she has to move on and make sure these animals are okay and everything like that. But again, you find out, and just the fact that you find out that she is basically a Joe pretty much in the same time period that he was becoming right into his own. Again, people grow up, people become better people, but the fact that she's willing to shit on these people below her and not own up to what she was doing it just keeps showing that she's hypocritical. And I understand where Joe's coming from at this point, that it's not just that she is an animal rights activist trying to shut him down, but that she is so far up her own ass that she's willing to take out all these people to make herself seem bigger. She's just going to keep building herself up and up, that's showing, I'm going to shut down this place and this place and this place. Maybe you should have done more earlier on to make your place a little better, which you didn't. You brought in your own animals to make it seem like you were already rescuing animals, and you brought in a few more to kind of show that you're doing all this great work and everything. It wasn't originally you, it was originally your husband, which, not saying you can't have a co-partnership on something that's up and coming, but you're trying to take credit where credit isn't due. And that's the one thing I do like about this episode, is they really show how convoluted she is in her own mind, how convoluted she is with having her whole ideas that her thing's actually a sanctuary, and how she's going to fight to the end to think that it's that way. Again, my biggest complaint, same with the doggies' biggest complaints, there wasn't enough animals in this episode, so I didn't really care about it. But again, I think it's a good setup for the rest of the series. I just didn't like the episode personally. I'd like to see what you guys think about it. Again, this review is more so me rambling, because I don't really have a stand on... There wasn't too much animal mindset in this, so it was more so investigating and kind of seeing if she did it or if she didn't do it. I 100% think she did it. There's no other motive for pretty much anyone. Well, there is. He's a millionaire, a multi-millionaire, so I understand why they take that money, but no one else was going to get that money besides her, because there was no way to pull that money out of him. So again, she did it. I'd like to see everyone else's ideas on it. If you don't think she did it, I'd really love to see why you didn't think she did it. But I don't see any other possible way that it wasn't her, that she either septic tank, which I 100% believe with Joe, or it's the grinding meat. I think that would have taken a little bit longer for her to do and to dispose of the body. But that's just me. And then again and again and again throughout the series, it just seems like the government and the police just kind of stop, which I guess their jurisdiction can't go too far into privately owned things, because they can't get in to do those types of things. But I think there's enough reasoning, especially with a possible murder case at this point, that they should have been able to do something. Again, if anyone has a little more ideas on it, I'm assuming someone has something, I'd like to see your opinion on it, just because I don't know fully what the extent of the law is for those types of things, especially working with non-profits and private zoos and private rescues at that point. Like, do they have any say, or is it more of like a lawless area where it's kind of super gray area to kind of take into account with everything here? Again, this is rambling. This is probably going to be my worst one. This next episode, the fourth one, it's pretty much the fourth and the final episode. Not my fourth and final, but fourth and the seventh episode are the two episodes that really they really affected me throughout. Those two really had a big issue with me personally, just with everything went on. But the ending of the third episode, I'm going to feed the dogs and then get ready to do the fourth episode. So stay cool out there, kids.